Welcome to BizTech's Asia's hottest startup show. Now, our guest for today is Sam Coyne. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of Currenxie. Currenxie is a financial technology company that offers business accounts, bank and card payments, as well as currency exchange for the borderless economy. Now, to tell us more about this, welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, Sam, could you give us an overview of Currenxie's journey from when it started in 2014 to where it's today?
I'd be happy to. As you said, started in 2014 in Hong Kong, which is still our headquarters, although today we're operating quite globally, I will say. The seed for the business, if you like, started with our founder, Ricardo, who after a career in finance, which took in a spell at Goldman Sachs and hedge fund management, he was back in Hong Kong and his family had been running a wine business there for a number of decades. And one thing that he was keenly aware of was that the business had spent an enormous amount of money over the years importing wine on the foreign exchange costs, right? And Hong Kong is full of these import-export businesses. And a lot of them operate on relatively tight margins, very typical in trading. And so he felt that he could leverage his past trading experience to build a technology platform specifically for SMEs who aren't getting the kind of access to, foreign exchange services that major multinationals are getting. And that's really how Currenxie came to be. It was the idea of taking this sort of institutional financial knowledge and technology and bringing them together. And then ultimately giving what we offer today, we call it the global account, which is a very, very simple platform for businesses of all sizes to do cross-border fund transfers and foreign exchange at low cost. And that's what it is, in a nutshell.
Now, Sam, so that's really interesting because because of the domain expertise in trading, because of his family business, coupled with domain expertise in high finance, he was able to then build a solution that solves very specific problems, as you said, for the SME space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very specific problem, but it's a very universal one as well.
Now, can you give us an idea of Currenxie's footprint globally right now?
Yeah, certainly. So, as I said, we're headquartered in Hong Kong, but we have clients from well over 50 countries globally. Right now, what I would describe as maybe our core payments network expands to a bit over 50 countries. And what I mean by that is those are countries where we have a direct connection to our own payment network through which we facilitate what we would call borderless payments or very fast money transfer. And then beyond that, we have sort of third-party connection to 100 plus countries. So for us, being born in Hong Kong, if you like, as a company, Hong Kong and the greater China area is our biggest market today. But Europe, North America, Southeast Asia, Australia, all areas where we've attracted a lot of businesses to our platform.
Now, Sam, could you then, for the benefit of our audience, break down with some specific examples and use cases of how customers use your products and services?
I'll give you a really common example. We serve a lot of e-commerce businesses. That's a segment that's very, very popular, and I would say a very sort of natural marriage with a type of platform like ours, because most e-commerce businesses are cross-border by their nature. They typically are sourcing from suppliers in foreign countries, and being an online business, they're usually taking advantage of the fact that they can also sell in foreign countries. So they have this natural need for dealing in multiple currencies and having cross-border flows. So a really common example would be, say, a Hong Kong business opens an account with us, a global account with us. And what we'll do is we'll issue them virtual accounts, virtual bank accounts in each of the markets around the world where they're selling and where they're therefore generating sales proceeds, profits. And so we'll give them the ability very, very quickly on our platform through our single account to be able to collect those payments through domestic banks in each of the markets where they do business. So they're having the funds from their sales credited to their accounts much more quickly than if they were relying on a single bank in their home country. And they're also able to collect in the domestic currency. So that's very convenient. And then we sort of flip that around for them. When they need to send a payment to a supplier in a foreign country, they do an instant FX conversion on our platform. We are an FX wholesale provider. It's one of our core competencies, I would say. And then we simply pay out through local banks. And so we have this, I would say, in the background, very complex, very technologically advanced platform and network, but that is linking bank accounts all around the world. But what we do for the customer is ultimately very, very simple. We just make it easy for them to collect and send money and exchange it with no fuss, very minimal fees, and very fast, which is essential for a lot of businesses today.
Okay, the value proposition for businesses like you is very clear. It's basically faster payment and lower cost. Typically, how much would they save on their transaction fees compared to the traditional ways that they use it? And how much faster do they get their money?
It's very variable depending on the countries involved. And the reason for that is, most countries around the world, obviously they have their domestic currencies, but they also have their domestic settlement and clearing systems for bank payments and fund transfers. And so if you like, the minimum amount of time required for a payment to go through varies around the world. It's limited by the speed of the domestic system. In Hong Kong, we're blessed with an FPS, a faster payment system. It's basically instantaneous. A lot of other countries have that now. Other countries, say like the US, has ACH. It's a little slower, sometimes same day, sometimes next day. But they are, piloting next year the new FedNow system, which will bring instant payments to the US. So, for most of the payments we're doing, it's varying between 1 business day, potentially 2 business days, to instant. And it really depends on which country it's going from. In terms of savings, which you asked about, again, also a little bit variable depending on the payment flows. For an e-commerce business, we could be saving them anywhere from 2 to 5% on their major fund flows, which is quite a significant saving.
Which is tremendous, in fact, because given the cost, as you said earlier in the interview, around margins, especially in e-commerce, which are slim because of the hyper competition, 2 to 5% is a very significant saving.
It is. And most of that comes from the foreign exchange element. The speed is in the money transfer, but a lot of the saving comes from the foreign exchange because we're giving obviously an excellent rate, but we're also generally helping our clients to minimize the number of FX transactions that happen in their global payment flows. So that we're only converting between currencies when we need to, rather than sort of stacking multiple exchanges as it goes through a value chain. So those are by lowering the actual cost of the FX, but then the number of transactions, those are the 2 ways where we really see that significant saving.
Now, Sam, you mentioned that e-commerce is really, a big chunk of your business. And you also mentioned that partnerships are really a way that you expand your reach. You have recently, a few months ago, announced your participation in Amazon's payment service provider program. And I understand that also is on top of existing relationships with Spotify and people like eBay. Is that part of your strategy to really globalize the business?
Absolutely. A lot of our e-commerce clients sell on more than one marketplace around the world. It's very, very common. They could be an Amazon seller in addition to being an eBay seller. They may operate their own store on a platform like WooCommerce. So we need to be able to go where they go and support them where they want to go, because a big part of our value proposition is ultimately helping businesses scale around the world, right? And we take part of the money transfer. So if they want to, go to France and sell on Cdiscount, France's big national online retailer, we will happily support that. In most cases, popular marketplaces like the ones I mentioned won't require a company like ours to necessarily have a direct integration. They're generally quite open to working with us. In Amazon's case, world's most popular online marketplace, they introduced their payment service provider program last year. And that was really an initiative to bring a bit more transparency and security for the sellers, to make sure that they're only working with payment companies such as ourselves that have been vetted and have gone through the proper process of joining Amazon's program now. So for Amazon and for the payment companies that participate, there is a level of trust and security now for everybody that they've built this program, which I think can be said to be warranted due to Amazon's sheer scale. If you like, certain measures need to be taken, and we're very happy to participate in it.
Now, Sam, we've been talking a lot around marketplaces, the likes of Amazon, eBay, and so forth, and probably in our part of the world here, Lazada and Shopee. But really, the other opportunity is in the B2B payment space. Now, the world's B2B market payments it's expected to exceed 1.9 trillion. And it has a compounded annual growth rate of about 13%. Is that part of your strategy? And what could you shed light in terms of the B2B payment space?
Very much so. So, I mentioned e-commerce businesses, but we have a huge number of import-export, consulting, software businesses using our platform as well. And for them, it's really entirely B2B payment flows. And that's another thing where, in our increasingly globalized world, almost every business today is international in some respect. Even if it's just having a contractor in a foreign country or some sort of vendor, there's always a need nearly these days to have some kind of ability to quickly and easily move money around the world. And as you said, it's growing and it's only going to grow, right? The world is becoming more interconnected. And so the need for this continues to grow. And so what we find is, if I take it back again to our home base of Hong Kong, companies from all over the world come to Hong Kong to incorporate. Due to it's an excellent environment to run a business, but they do so usually because they then want to look outwards from Hong Kong to the rest of Asia. And so when they come to Hong Kong and they set up, they have a need to then very quickly expand out beyond its borders. And that's one of the ways we support the B2B payment flows, is because a client can come to us, open a global account on our platform. It's sort of one and done, right? You've got that. Mm-hmm. And then anytime you need to enter a new market around Asia, we'll have you up and running in minutes in terms of giving you a virtual account there so you can get paid, or you can set up a beneficiary in that market. And we'll already have accounts in country. So you're really, accelerating from a B2B perspective, your ability to enter new markets quickly and work with people in those markets. You're not sending a company director to Indonesia for a few weeks to speak to one of the local banks about getting a corporate account. You're just logging onto our platform and requesting it, and it's there. So we really, for B2B companies, it's a single portal that for them takes kind of a lot of the stress and time and resources out of expanding into new markets, at least from a payments perspective.
And Sam, just as you were explaining that, basically, I now know that we have a problem that's been solved by Currenxie.
That's lovely to hear. That's lovely to hear. Well, you have my contact information.
Yes, you've got, you'll be hearing from me. But Sam, over to Currenxie as a business itself. Basically, this business has grown from 2014 without any external funding, but you recently closed a $10 million Series A funding round led by a family office, BF Belmont, last year. Tell us about this and why your founders decided to go now to raise capital after all these years.
Yeah, Currenxie took a very, I would say, organic approach to growth for the first 7 or so years. The focus was really on building the financial network, which there's no two ways about it. That involves a lot of flying around the world and a lot of meeting with major banks and, establishing any one of our integrations that we have with more than 24 banks around the world. That can be easily a 1 to 2 year project per bank, right? So that's a significant commitment of time and resources to do that. And then, in the background, our core technology stack was being built. So in the early days, the company was self-funded by the founder. And I said, took a very measured approach, growing the business organically, reinvesting. And then by 2017, we really had our core technology stack ready. And that's when the global account, which is our main platform as we know it today, was really officially released. And so we're completely vertically integrated because of that approach we took. We own all our IP, we own all our systems, all our technology. And then we had a couple of years after that to get that in the market and scale and acquire clients and show real revenue growth. And then the next step for us was to really expand our headcount and to acquire even more regulatory licenses in more jurisdictions and invest in more tech. And it was really at that point in 2020 that we felt, we're ready now to scale this business. We're ready to move. And that's when we started speaking to family offices. And as you said, BF Belmont was our main participant in that round. And most of that funding went into expanding, as I said, our headcount. A lot of our groups have scaled up from compliance and operations to, of course, technology, which is hugely important. We have a lot of developers on staff. And it's also being put towards, as I said, expanding into some new markets that we're not present in yet and acquiring the licenses there. Regulatory licenses are capital intensive. And so you need to be well equipped for that.
And also, Sam, then obviously one of the key things is this is a hot space that you're in, that the payment space that you're in. It's also an ultra competitive space. What are you doing then to stay ahead of the curve over the next 12 to 24 months?
So for us, I think the future of the space that we're in, which, as you said, is competitive. And actually just this week, someone said to me a portmanteau of competition and partnership, which I can't remember right now. But I think that's an emerging trend as well, as there's a lot of friendly competition and increasing number of partnerships in the global payments space. We think the real value lies in being an infrastructure provider, in being a company that can provide not only the technology, but the network to actually facilitate cross-border payment flows. And because of our philosophy from day one, build it yourself, that's a capability that we absolutely have. Our network is our own, our platform is our own. And so now what we're doing is we're really turning to that sort of partnership model of opening up our infrastructure and our network to other companies that might want to use it to scale their own. And that's how we think we're going to really drive value from what we've created, in addition to, of course, continuing to serve and offer features to our SME clients.
And essentially, Sam, you guys are picks and shovels guys.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to say. Yeah, we have done a lot of the dirty work. And we are providing a lot of I would say the core instrument that you need to get the job done. Yeah, it's a fair assessment.
Now, looking ahead in terms of the payment space, what are some key trends that you see that are emerging in global payments?
It's a fascinating time to be in the payment space. All over the world, there are pilot projects, whether it's at central bank level with digital currencies, or down to private startups such as ourselves that are building new networks and new ways of connecting markets. It's quite challenging actually to pick any one. And I will put my hand up and say that I'm not a perfect oracle. I have personal predictions as to where some of it may go. I think we are definitely going to see greater interoperability in the next few years between domestic systems. So things like in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of cooperation going on right now between Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, et cetera, to make instant payments available between the two countries, right? That's a big regulatory challenge, but it's also a big technical challenge, right? Systems that were not designed to speak to each other originally are now, leveraging API technology to communicate. And that's, I think, at a consumer level, very exciting. The idea that, you'll be able to move your money across those borders, whether for tourism or anything else, with a lot less friction. So I think from a consumer perspective, in the next 5 years, we'll see some really significant advancements in that sense. And hopefully in Asia, we'll progressively move towards something like the SEPA system that Europe has, where, Asia is not going to be on a single currency, don't get me wrong. But hopefully at least the transfer of funds is going to become a lot more frictionless.
So that brings also an interesting question that will emerge. If the countries can, and use a specific example of Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, if they are able to get their act together and make money flows more seamless, they are going to disintermediate a whole lot of providers of payments right now as well.
Yes and no. Yes, absolutely to an extent, but also there will still be intermediaries involved in that. The removal of friction is not necessarily the removal of participants, but just the enhancement of how it's being done, I suppose, to a certain extent. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There will be a certain amount of disruption. Anytime there's innovation, there's also disruption, and that is certainly part of it.
Sam, it's been a fascinating conversation. I've really learned a lot. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, I would say that, as I touched on already, I think partnerships is going to be a big focus in the payment space. A lot of companies have put a lot of time and effort into building systems like I've described, networks and platforms that carry an enormous amount of intrinsic value. And now they're seeing that maybe they've reached a point where, in order to serve more customers and create more value as a whole, it's time to get together, to partner, to merge and mesh networks in friendly ways, so that perhaps a provider in Asia who has really deep expertise in the region, great interconnectivity, will work with a Western payment company to start to facilitate flows between the two networks. And so I think for business leaders, that represents a real opportunity. Watch out for that, because there will be opportunities in the near future to, as I said, continue to lower your costs, continue to lower transfer times, and ultimately make things just a lot easier and simpler for your financial department, I would say.
Now, Sam, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
My pleasure, Brian. Thank you for having me.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to Sam Coyne, the Chief Marketing Officer of Currenxie, on BizTech's Asia's hottest startup show. This video and podcast will be on our social media platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. It'll also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.